This town has always been one of my favorite places. I wasn't born here, but I spent enough time visiting family as a kid that it still feels familiar. I always loved the parks. There are more than a few, and each one has its own charm. It'd be hard to pick a favorite, but I know Elmwood Park and Point Comfort, or Butch's Bay as it's still known to some, best, probably because they're the closest to my home. I take walks through Elmwood after dinner sometimes. It's peaceful, and if you go past the baseball diamond, behind the big hill, and into the trees, you might notice a faint path. Something not officially marked, but worn into the earth by generations of kids, nature lovers, and people looking for a shortcut to Cemetery Island. The other night, I took that path, and I saw something I wish I hadn't. The path is easy to follow, winding along the edge of a hill that slopes down to the lake. The best part is the view, especially at sunset, when the lake turns gold. There's a tree partway down the trail, perched right on the side of the hill. It's got the remains of an old tree fort in it. I've passed it 100 times, but every time I see it, I wonder the same thing. Who thought it was a good idea to build a fort up there? And more importantly, who was brave enough to climb into it? I was standing near the base of the tree, lost in thought, when I noticed something strange. A reflection on the lake. Not moonlight, not streetlights. It looked like fire. I've been keeping my distance from the lake since hearing Leo's story about the diver. Something about it just stuck with me. But if there was a fire, I figured it was better to check it out now than to regret it later. I made my way carefully, trying to pinpoint the source of the reflection. That's when I heard it. A low noise just at the edge of my hearing. At first, I thought it was the wind, but the closer I got, the more distinct it became. Whispers. It reminded me of the voices in the tunnel under downtown, just out of reach, impossible to make out. But unlike the tunnel, the whispers grew louder as I approached. I slowed my steps, moving as quietly as I could. The path sloped downward, leading toward a ravine where the firelight flickered against the trees. I stopped and carefully looked over the edge. And that's when I saw them. There were at least 10 of them, all standing at the water's edge. They were dressed in black robes facing the lake, their voices blending together in a low, rhythmic chant. The fire was small, barely more than a flicker, casting long shadows across the water. I stood there, frozen, watching. There was something about the way they were gathered, about the way they faced the lake. I didn't want to know what they were doing, and I didn't want to stick around to find out. Carefully, quietly, I turned and made my way back, away from the fire and the whispers. By the time I reached the path again, my hands were shaking. I didn't stop moving until I was home. I called Leo right after I got in the door. I needed to know I wasn't just letting my imagination get the best of me. I told him what I saw. He was quiet for a second, then exhaled. Yeah, that's weird. But it could have been anything. A student art project? A performance? You'd be surprised what kind of stuff people do in college towns. I guess, I said, though I wasn't convinced. Leo paused. I mean, I've definitely seen weirder stuff. Actually, this reminds me of a story or two. I didn't ask him to elaborate. Leo's voice turned serious. You should probably report it, though. If there was fire down there, it's worth checking out. I agreed. I hung up, and then I called the police. Leo was probably right. It was probably just some kind of weird, harmless event, but even now I can't shake the feeling that it was something else. Either way, I think I'll find a new route for my after-dinner walks.